Distractions are part of life. In fact, they're more accessible now than ever before. 100 apps beg for your attention before you've even had your morning coffee. Your phone buzzes with notifications the second your mind starts to focus. People interrupt you with questions, opinions, and doubts. You sit down to work and suddenly remember that one thing you forgot to do yesterday. Before you know it, your energy is divided, your motivation scattered, and your purpose, the very reason you began this journey, fades into the background. But here's the truth, your purpose doesn't fade. It doesn't dissolve because you got distracted. It's still there, quietly waiting for you, even when you lose sight of it. Purpose is not loud. It doesn't shout like a breaking news headline or flash like a notification. It's subtle. It lives in the gut. It lives in that deep sense of knowing you felt when you first made the decision to pursue something greater. Purpose isn't a mood. It's not based on how you feel today, how people treat you, or whether things are going smoothly. Distractions are tied to the moment. Purpose is tied to your identity. And the dangerous thing about distractions is that they often appear to be harmless, sometimes even helpful. They disguise themselves as things you need to do right now. They pretend to be urgent while your purpose patiently waits. There are days when distraction feels like relief. It's easier to scroll than to sit in front of a blank page. It's easier to answer emails than confront your deepest work. But what's easy in the moment is rarely what leads you to growth. Easy is seductive. Easy feels safe. But if you live for comfort, you'll never step into your calling. You didn't start your journey because it was convenient. You started because something in you refused to settle. You felt the pull of purpose, that magnetic force inside you that said, there's more, I can do more, I can be more. That kind of energy doesn't come from a distraction. That comes from vision. It comes from clarity. And when you're clear, you're dangerous not to others, but to every excuse and distraction trying to talk you out of becoming who you were born to be. Most people aren't lazy, they're just misaligned. They're not tired because they're doing too much. They're tired because they're doing too many of the wrong things. They're chasing distractions instead of building toward their purpose. And the longer you entertain what isn't meant for you, the more energy you rob from what is. When you remember your purpose, you start to see distractions for what they really are, thieves. Thieves of time, thieves of peace, thieves of potential. They don't break in and steal everything all at once. They steal a little bit at a time, a few wasted minutes here, a day of procrastination there, another excuse, another compromise, another week passed with nothing meaningful done, and then you look up, and the dream you had months ago is still sitting on the shelf, untouched, unlived. You don't need more time. You don't need better tools or better luck or a perfect moment. You need to reclaim your why. Because once you truly lock into your purpose, distractions lose their power. Not because they disappear, but because they no longer deserve your attention. Focus is not about discipline alone. It's about direction. Purpose gives you that direction. It tells you where you're headed. It reminds you what matters. It pulls you forward when everything else tries to hold you back. When your life is led by purpose, your days begin to reflect that purpose. Your choices change, your standards rise. You begin to ask, is this helping me grow or pulling me away from who I'm trying to become? Purpose is the compass. Distractions are the detours. If you don't keep your eyes on the compass, you'll end up miles away from the life you're supposed to be living. And it's not just about work or success or goals. Purpose changes how you live. It impacts your relationships, your habits, your mindset. It makes you more intentional, more present, more resilient. When you live on purpose, You stop chasing things that don't align. You stop needing approval from people who don't understand your vision. You stop apologizing for being focused. You start moving with clarity and boldness. And yes, people will still try to pull your attention in 100 directions. The distractions won't stop, but you will have changed. You will have rooted yourself so deeply in your purpose that anything not aligned with it will feel like noise. Purpose doesn't promise ease, but it promises meaning. And meaning will carry you farther than motivation ever will. Motivation is temporary. It comes and goes like the weather. But purpose, that's different. Purpose is what wakes you up when your body wants to sleep. It's what pulls you forward when progress feels slow. It's what keeps your hands steady even when your heart is uncertain. You don't need to fight every distraction. You just need to return to the place where you decided that this mattered, where you knew deep down that the version of you who stays true to the calling is stronger than the one who listens to noise. That's still you. That's always been you. Distractions don't always come dressed as obvious temptations or loud interruptions. Most of the time, they arrive quietly. They slip into your day disguised as necessity, responsibility, or rest. They pretend to be things that matter. They wear the costume of productivity when in reality they're robbing you of momentum, clarity, and progress. The most dangerous distractions aren't the ones that look like problems. They're the ones that look like priorities. It's easy to recognize a distraction when it's packaged in laziness, procrastination, or something clearly unproductive. You know when you've been scrolling too long, watching instead of building, or talking about goals instead of working on them. But what happens when the distraction looks like something important? What happens when it wears the mask of something good? That's where most people get stuck. They confuse motion with progress. They confuse activity with alignment. They stay busy, but not focused. And busy is one of the greatest disguises a distraction can wear. Because if you're doing a lot, it feels like you're doing well. But if what you're doing is pulling you away from your mission, then that busyness is just noise. You can be exhausted, drained, even burnt out, and still not be any closer to your purpose. Some distractions show up as responsibilities you never questioned. You take on tasks because people expect it. You say yes because you don't want to disappoint. You keep commitments that don't serve your growth because they've become habits. And all the while, your vision sits on hold, your energy gets split, your time gets swallowed up, and your dream, the one you were meant to chase, gets further out of reach. You can be distracted by your own good intentions, wanting to help others, wanting to please people, wanting to be everything to everyone. These are noble desires, but they can become traps if they consistently cost you your direction. The truth is, not everything that asks for your attention deserves it. Not every call needs to be answered. Not every opportunity is aligned, and not every urgent thing is important. Urgency is one of the cleverest disguises a distraction can wear. It creates pressure. It makes you feel like if you don't act now, you'll miss something critical. But many urgent things are simply loud, not vital. They scream for your response, not because they matter, but because they know you're conditioned to react. You start the day intending to work on your goals, and suddenly you're pulled into solving a dozen small problems. By the end of the day, you've handled everything except what was most meaningful. And this doesn't just happen once in a while, it becomes a pattern. The more often you surrender to distractions, the easier it is to rationalize them. You tell yourself, I'll get to my dream tomorrow, or let me just handle this first. And those little justifications, those little compromises, become the very things that delay your progress for weeks, months, even years. Sometimes the distraction is internal. It's not the phone or the email or the noisy world outside. It's the fear you haven't addressed. The doubt, the self-sabotage, the voice in your head that says, maybe I'm not ready yet. So instead of working, you plan. Instead of building, you research. You create endless to-do lists. You get stuck in preparation instead of action. And you convince yourself that you're doing what you're supposed to. But really, you're hiding. And fear wears the mask of perfectionism, of caution, of logic, when it's really just a distraction from execution. Even relationships can become disguised distractions. The wrong people will pull you off track not because they mean to, but because they don't understand the urgency of your mission. They don't see what you see. They don't feel the fire you feel, so they invite you to slow down. They tell you to take it easy. They offer comfort when what you need is challenge. And because you love them, you listen. And slowly, you start to settle. Not because you've given up, but because you've been surrounded by voices that never demanded more from you. Distractions don't need to be evil to be effective. They just need to be consistent. Drip by drip, they water down your intensity. They chip away at your clarity. They dull your edge. And before long, you've adapted to a pace and pattern that no longer matches the version of you who first felt called to do this work. To regain focus, you have to become ruthless about what you allow into your space. That doesn't mean becoming cold or unkind. It means becoming aware. Start questioning what enters your calendar, what enters your mind, what enters your conversations. Is this adding to my purpose or subtracting from it? Is this helping me grow or keeping me stuck in the loop of comfort and distraction? The difference between people who succeed and people who stay stuck isn't just talent. It's not just resources. It's discernment. The successful learn how to separate what looks valuable from what is valuable. They know how to say no, not out of arrogance, but out of alignment. They don't chase everything. They stay rooted in the few things that matter most. Your attention is your currency. You spend it every moment of every day, and if you're not careful, distractions will bankrupt your potential before you even realize what you've lost. Most people give up not because they lack talent or drive, but because they believe they're still too far from the finish line. They stop when the process becomes uncomfortable, when the results aren't immediate, or when the path ahead seems longer than they expected. The illusion of distance is one of the most powerful mental traps on the journey toward any meaningful goal. What feels like 1,000 miles away might be just a few more steps around the corner. The breakthrough, the opportunity, the change, it could all be much closer than you realize. But you'll never know unless you keep going. One of the hardest things to accept is that progress is often invisible. You can be doing the right things, putting in the right effort, building something with purpose, and still not see the results right away. You may be growing roots underground when all you want is to see branches in the air. You might be in the season where the reward hasn't shown up yet, but that doesn't mean the work isn't working. Most people walk away in this space, convinced that nothing is happening, but real growth rarely announces itself in the moment. It moves in silence and then all at once. It's easy to romanticize beginnings, that first moment you set your goal. The adrenaline, the clarity, the feeling of fresh commitment. It's also easy to fantasize about the end, the success, the recognition, the transformation. But what's hardest to embrace is the middle, that stretch of time when you're doing the work, showing up daily, and questioning if it's making a difference. That's the space where doubt creeps in. That's the space where people convince themselves to settle. The mind starts to whisper things like, "This isn't working," or "Maybe it wasn't meant for me." You begin to question if the sacrifices are worth it. You start looking around at others, wondering why their path looks smoother, their results faster. You feel stuck. But feeling stuck and being stuck are not the same. Sometimes the moment before things shift is the moment when everything feels still. The pressure before the breakthrough can feel like defeat, but it's often a sign that you're right on the edge of something. Momentum builds quietly. It doesn't always show up as external progress at first. It might show up as a shift in your thinking, a change in your habits, a new sense of discipline. These inner changes are often missed because they don't look like success, but they create success. You don't always need a win to be winning. Sometimes the biggest victories happen when you keep going on the days you feel like quitting. When people say trust the process, they're not offering a cliché, they're offering a survival tool. Because the process doesn't always look like it's working, even when it is. It tests your belief before it rewards your effort. It asks you to be faithful with the work even when nothing around you validates it. And that's when most people check out. They look at their current results and assume that what they're doing isn't working. But your current results are not always a reflection of your current effort. They're often the outcome of past momentum. You're building now what you'll benefit from later. Time has a strange way of rewarding the persistent. What didn't work last month might click into place tomorrow. The opportunity you've been waiting for might be delayed, not denied. And the gap between where you are and where you want to be might not be as wide as you think. The problem is, most people don't stick around long enough to find out. We live in a culture that glorifies fast results. Overnight success stories dominate headlines. But what those stories rarely reveal is the years of quiet persistence that came before the spotlight. The countless failures, the long nights, the times when walking away seemed easier. No one tells the full story, so we assume our journey is flawed when it takes longer. We assume we're behind when in truth we're on time, just not on their timeline. You're closer than you think, but you won't feel it if you keep measuring distance with doubt. Doubt stretches the road in your mind. It makes every step feel heavier. It tells you to pause, to hesitate, to look back. And hesitation delays progress more than any mistake ever could. Doubt doesn't need to be loud to be powerful. Even the quietest doubt can become a detour if you give it too much attention. On the other side of resistance is always revelation. You may not see the whole path, but you don't need to. What you need is the courage to take the next step with faith. Faith that your effort is not wasted. Faith that your pace is not too slow. Faith that your breakthrough is not out of reach. People often quit at 90%, not because they don't care, but because they lose sight of how close they really are. There's a tipping point in every journey where what felt impossible suddenly becomes inevitable. You don't get to choose the exact moment that happens. You only get to choose whether or not you'll keep moving toward it. Most progress is hidden in repetition. The same actions repeated with commitment produce unseen traction, and eventually that traction breaks the surface. Belief is what carries you when proof is still on the way. You have to learn to hold on to your vision even when your current view doesn't match it. You have to remind yourself that the gap between where you are and where you want to be is filled by consistency, not magic. And every time you take one more step, even a small one, you're closing that gap faster than you realize. Focus is often misunderstood. People talk about it like it's something you either have or you don't, like some are born with laser, sharp attention, and others are doomed to a life of constant distraction. But the truth is, focus isn't a gift handed out to a chosen few, it's a skill. It's something you train, something you strengthen, something you learn through intention, effort, and repetition. The same way a muscle gets stronger with resistance, your ability to focus grows every time you push through the temptation to give in to distractions. What makes focus powerful is not how much of it you're born with, but how deliberately you choose to build it. It's easy to say, "I'm just not good at concentrating," and use that as a reason to drift through your days without direction. But focus isn't about having a natural ability to tune everything else out. It's about deciding what matters most, and then creating the conditions to protect it. It's about eliminating what doesn't serve your purpose, so you can give your best energy to what does. In a world overflowing with noise, the ability to focus has become a competitive advantage. Everything is fighting for your attention: apps, ads, messages, headlines, people, responsibilities. Every sound, every screen, every scroll is designed to hijack your mind. And if you don't actively take control of your focus, it will be controlled for you. That's not a flaw in you. That's how modern life is engineered. So the discipline to focus isn't just about willpower, it's about design. You have to set up your life, your habits, and your environment in a way that supports what you're truly trying to build. Training focus starts with clarity. You can't concentrate on what matters if you don't know what matters. Most people struggle to focus because they haven't taken the time to define what their real goals are. They react to whatever comes their way, chasing the loudest voice or the next urgent thing. But focus isn't about reacting, it's about responding with purpose. It's the difference between being busy and being productive. Being busy is letting the day run you. Being productive is telling the day where to go. Focus requires boundaries. It means saying no more often than you say yes. It means turning off the phone, closing the tab, stepping away from the noise. It means carving out space where only your most important work is allowed to live. People will push against those boundaries. Life will challenge them. But the stronger your commitment to your focus, the less you'll be shaken by interruptions. Focus doesn't mean you live in isolation or avoid all distractions. It means you become intentional about when and how you allow them into your space. The hardest part of focus isn't starting, it's sustaining. Anyone can focus for a few minutes, maybe even an hour if they really try. But to stay locked in over time, to return to your work day after day with the same energy, that takes training. That takes habits. That takes eliminating decision fatigue and setting routines that support your goals. The truth is, people don't rise to the level of their motivation. They fall to the level of their systems. And your systems either support your focus or sabotage it. Every time you choose focus over distraction, you reinforce the identity of someone who's serious about their mission. Every time you protect your time, every time you finish something you start, you build the muscle. And just like a workout, it might not feel rewarding in the moment, but the compound effect over time is undeniable. You may not see immediate results, but focus pays interest over time. It builds discipline. It sharpens your thinking. It makes your work deeper, stronger, and more impactful. Focus is also about presence. It's not just about productivity. It's about being fully where you are. When you're with your work, be with it completely. When you're with people, listen to them fully. When you rest, rest without guilt. Split focus is a silent thief. It makes you feel like you're doing everything, but leaves you empty because you're not fully in anything. Training focus means practicing presence, and presence is what brings power to any action you take. There will always be moments when you feel pulled in 100 directions. There will be days when distractions seem louder than your purpose. Focus doesn't mean those moments don't exist. It means you keep choosing to return. Return to your reason. Return to your goals. Return to the work that matters most. Focus is not perfection. It's not about being locked in every second of the day. It's about noticing when you've drifted and choosing to realign. It's easy to look at highly focused people and think they have something special. But most of the time, what they have is practice. They've failed at focus too. The only difference is that they didn't quit. They learned from every distraction, every mistake, every slip. They got better at noticing what pulls them off course and adjusting faster. That's all part of the process. Focus is not a straight line. It's a constant recalibration. You don't need to wait for the perfect moment to be focused. You don't need ideal conditions or a wave of motivation. You just need to start with what you have, where you are. Every small act of focus counts. Every minute you spend fully engaged in your purpose is a step forward. Focus is not a gift waiting to be discovered. It's a skill waiting to be claimed. Every meaningful pursuit begins with a reason. There was a moment when the vision first came to you. Maybe it wasn't loud or dramatic. Maybe it wasn't even clear, but it was real. It was powerful enough to move you. Something inside you said, "This matters." That moment, that spark, is what created your why, the deep internal reason behind your actions. And no matter how far you've come or how lost you may feel, that reason is still in you, even if you haven't felt it lately. As time passes, it's easy to drift away from your why. Life gets complicated, pressure builds, expectations shift. What once felt personal becomes routine. You begin to move through your goals on autopilot. The early fire that burned so brightly now flickers quietly behind deadlines, stress, and distractions. What once felt urgent now feels like a task. What once fueled you now weighs on you. This doesn't mean you've failed. It means you're human, and it means it's time to return. You can build your whole life on discipline, consistency, and structure, and you should, but without purpose behind it. Burnout will eventually find you. Motivation fades, energy drains, and the daily grind begins to erode your sense of meaning. That's when you feel tired and don't know why. That's when your work feels heavier, your joy feels distant, and your goals start to feel like obligations. It's not because your dreams aren't valid. It's because you've lost connection to the reason behind them. Your why is the foundation. Without it, the structure cracks. Without it, your goals become empty. Without it, your progress slows because it's not anchored to anything meaningful. Reconnecting with your why doesn't mean changing your path. It means remembering what made you choose it in the first place. Before you wanted recognition, before you wanted achievement, before you got caught up in results, there was something pure and honest driving you. That's the part of you that needs to be reignited. Your why is emotional. It's not a line you write in a planner or a sentence you post on a wall. It's a feeling, it's a knowing. It's tied to your values, your beliefs, your identity. It's connected to your story, to where you've been, what you've overcome, and what you want your life to stand for. And sometimes you have to slow down to find it again. You have to step back from the pressure, the deadlines, the need to prove something, and simply ask yourself, why did I start? This isn't about nostalgia. It's about power. Your why holds the emotional fuel that can carry you through the hardest parts of your journey. When things go wrong, when progress is slow, when no one's clapping, your why is what keeps you in motion. It's what gets you up when you've been knocked down. It's what reminds you that this is bigger than your mood, bigger than your circumstances, bigger than the obstacles in front of you. Sometimes we confuse the pursuit with the purpose. We chase the goal so hard that we forget what the goal was supposed to give us in the first place. Was it freedom, fulfillment, impact, healing, growth? You started this for a reason. You were trying to change something in your life, in yourself, in the world around you. That reason didn't disappear. You just stopped listening for it. And the longer you operate disconnected from it, the more drained you become. You don't need to be inspired every moment of the day, but you do need to stay connected to meaning. Meaning is what gives your work weight. It's what gives your actions depth. You can go through the motions for a while, but eventually that emptiness catches up to you. And when it does, the only way forward is to return to center. Return to the why. Revisit the vision. Remind yourself of what's at stake if you quit. Remind yourself of who you're doing this for, not just others, but yourself. This is also about identity. Your why isn't just what you want, it's who you want to become. Every goal is a reflection of a deeper desire to evolve, to grow into someone stronger, wiser, more complete. So when you reconnect with your why, you reconnect with your future self, the version of you that stayed committed, the version of you that kept showing up, the version of you that didn't settle. That version of you already exists. Your why is what guides you toward it. Clarity comes from alignment. When your actions are aligned with your why, everything moves differently. Work becomes devotion. Challenges become opportunities. Obstacles become reminders of how much this matters. But alignment doesn't happen by accident. It happens when you regularly pause and reflect, when you ask the hard questions, when you allow yourself to feel again, not just think through strategy, but connect to emotion. Because strategy builds structure, but emotion drives behavior. It's easy to get caught up in the noise. Metrics, opinions, comparisons, they all pull you further away from your center. Reconnecting with your why silences the noise. It reminds you that you're not doing this to impress, you're doing this to express. You're not chasing validation, you're chasing transformation. You're not here to perform, you're here to evolve. That truth changes the way you move. It brings you back to purpose. It brings you back to power. You don't need a new plan. You don't need more motivation. You need to feel the weight of your original reason again. The reason you said yes. The reason you started. The reason you made the decision that changed your direction. That reason still lives in you, buried beneath the clutter of expectations and distractions. It's not gone, it's just waiting to be remembered. So now you've heard the truth. The distractions, the doubts, the detours, they're all part of the journey, but they're not the destination. You didn't come this far to forget who you are or why you started. The purpose that pulled you forward still calls your name. And it's not too late to return to it, to protect your focus, to push through the noise, and to walk with clarity again. You're closer than you think. The breakthrough, the version of you you've been working for, the life that feels aligned, it's not somewhere out there. It's right on the other side of discipline, belief, and remembering. So strip away the distractions, cut through the excuses, and get back to the truth you knew from the beginning, that you were made for more, and the only thing between where you are and where you're meant to be is your decision to keep going.